Back here in our state, it's certainly been an active 2 years when it comes to extreme weather. Anything from blizzards, hurricanes, to historic power outages. The question is, do those storms signal a change in our climate? Our own chief meteorologist, Bruce Priest, has 34 years of forecasting experience, so he did some digging and has this report.
It was the summer of 2011 when Tropical Storm Irene arrived, packing powerful winds and driving rains, knocking out power to 800,000 homes, the worst power outages the state had ever seen. Just 2 months later, a freak October snowstorm named Alfred blew in and the lights were out again. Only this time, there were more of us in the dark, a new record of 880,000 outages, and it was nearly 2 weeks before the power was fully restored to the state. But by the time Alfred's anniversary arrived, along came Sandy, another history-making storm for our state. Power outages were a problem, but flooding on the coast was what really made it memorable. Fast forward a few months and bam, along comes Blizzard Charlotte, bearing us with record snowfall. Hamden took the prize with 40 inches, and it took days to dig out. Before we jump to conclusions about climate change, let's put things into perspective. Sure, Alfred and Charlotte were one-of-a-kind snowstorms, but we've had plenty of extreme storms scattered throughout our past. Let's go back to February of 1978. Blizzard Larry shut down the state. It didn't pile on the snow that Charlotte did, but it had much stronger winds that lasted for hours on end. And you weren't around for this one, but the blizzard of 1888 is really the granddaddy of winter storms, leaving up to 50 inches of snow in areas of the state. And if you want to talk about tropical storms, Irene and Sandy may be fresh in our minds, but in August of '55, storms Connie and Diane were equally as fierce, and their rains flooded many towns, including here in Putnam. But truly, no storm can compare to the hurricane of 1938, a Category 3 storm unlike anything we've seen since. We're talking utter devastation, trees down, intense flooding, and homes literally washed out to sea. So with that said, are storms of the past 2 years really worse? We've definitely seen more power outages than in the past, but there may be a simple explanation for that. The answer is all around us. Trees, all 857 million of them. They're larger and they're older. Kevin Nursick of the Connecticut DOT explains why we are at greater risk now versus when Hurricane Gloria struck in 1985.
Gloria was, in our opinion, definitely a stronger storm than Irene, but the trees, the size of the canopies were that much smaller 25 years ago. The trees were that much healthier. They hadn't had other storms really beating them up and making them weaker.
It's scary to think what would happen if we had a repeat of 1938.
If we were to get a Category 3 major hurricane, that 70 to 80% of the state's trees would be downed.
According to the report of the two-storm panel presented to Governor Malloy in the aftermath of Irene and Alfred, a storm as strong as a 1938 hurricane could black out the entire state for more than a month, and damage could exceed $54 billion. History will repeat itself, but I honestly believe there's no computer model or forecaster on the planet who can make an accurate long-term prediction on exactly when the next blockbuster storm will strike, or if these strong storms will become more frequent. After all, we've already seen alarming climate predictions go astray.
There are no climate models that have gotten the global temperature correct.
Lawrence Gould is professor of physics at the University of Hartford, and he's been researching global climate change for 8 years. He says real observations prove the 44 computer models that predict temperatures are not that accurate. While they predict warming, global temperatures have actually remained steady or have even cooled the last 15 years.
You look at the observations, and that would indicate that the models have to be corrected.
Bottom line is, over the last 108 years of record keeping here in Connecticut, we've seen a lot of fluctuations with the severity of storms and the range of temperatures. As recent as the 1970s, we were concerned about cooling. Now we've seen some very warm years in Connecticut. Last year was the warmest year on record in our state, and 2010 was the second warmest. So far, this year has been relatively cool, but to confirm a long-term trend, one way or the other, we have to see decades more of data.
Fascinating stuff, Bruce,
Absolutely.
really.
It is fascinating. The bottom line is, if I can't have a hard time predicting the weather 7 days out, how are we going to forecast accurately what's going to happen 50 to 100 years from now? Very difficult. Very difficult.
Interesting.
Well, let's give it our best for the next 7 days.